Mr. Brown, this court is now in session. State your claim. The judge's tone sliced through the courtroom like a blade. Crisp, icy, and authoritative. Cameras snapped in hurried bursts as journalists leaned forward in hopes, their pens ready to record every volatile detail. For years, Kody Brown had been famous to millions as the charming patriarch of TLC's Sister Wives, a man who had constructed a reality television empire on the concept of family, religion, and plural marriage. But today, all of that had been taken away from him. Today, he wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't a husband. He wasn't even a father in the eyes of the public. He was a defendant, and the stakes had never been higher. The courtroom was thick with tension. Seated behind him, banks of spectators filled the benches, some fans, some detractors, but all pulled by that same magnetic attraction, the collapse of a family they had once revered. In the middle of it all was Coyote Pass, the 14-acre property in Flagstaff, Arizona, where the Browns' wildest dream had once existed. A common paradise where every wife would construct her own house and their large family could all live together in peace. But those dreams had turned rotten from the inside out. Something that was meant to be a symbol of unity had now turned out to be a sword of betrayal. Kody sat rigidly at the defense table, his golden curls pulled back into a neat ponytail, a faked confidence plastered on his face. His lawyer muttered final words of advice, but Kody wasn't paying attention. He was too busy looking around. The cameras, the jury, the faces of individuals he used to love more than anything. And there they sat. Christine, Janelle, and Meri. Former partners, former confidants, the women to whom he had sworn forever. Now they were the accusers. They sat side by side at the plaintiff's table, bound by anger, betrayal, and by a common resolve to reclaim what they felt was theirs. Christine's jaw was clenched, her fierce resolve palpable. She had been the first to walk away from him, leaving behind years of marriage. Once she understood that loyalty was a word that meant nothing to a man who cared only for control. Janelle sat beside her, the dependable, realistic one, the one who had managed the family finances, who had best believed in Coyote Pass more than any other. And then there was Meri, withdrawn but calm, the first wife whose marriage to Kody had deteriorated into virtual estrangement. Meri had been quiet for years, but her very presence here made it clear that remaining silent was no longer a choice. And then there was Robyn, Kody's last remaining wife, his wife on paper, and the woman whom many held responsible for the breakdown of the family. She gripped Kody's hand firmly, knuckles white, face deathly pale with worry. Each look at the plaintiffs was tinged with disdain. For Robyn, this was not merely a lawsuit, but a breach of trust in the family structure she felt she had helped sustain. But beneath the outrage was terror, because she knew, deep inside, what this trial would reveal. This is not a divorce hearing, the judge added, his gaze focusing on Kody. This is a property dispute, a fight over ownership, rights, and intent. And it looks like, Mr. Brown, that your family feels you have not been in good faith. The words lingered in the air like smoke. Kody fidgeted in his chair, forcing a smile that did not extend to his eyes. Your Honor, he started, his voice measured and even. This is a misunderstanding. A family dispute that's been blown out of proportion. We all shared the same dream for Coyote Pass, to create a home for our family. I was merely attempting to deal with that dream responsibly. Christine's laugh, sharp and bitter, cut the silence. A misunderstanding, she said, struggling to keep it in. You signed away property behind our backs. You transferred assets into Robyn's name. You lied to us and did something different. That's not a misunderstanding, Kody, that's manipulation. A murmur ran through the courtroom as the reporters frantically scribbled. Kody's lawyer objected, labeling Christine's statement inflammatory. But the judge let her comment stand. You'll get your opportunity to speak, the judge told her firmly. But for the moment, we move on with the opening statements. The attorney for the plaintiffs, a cool but merciless woman named Rachel Carter, stood and went to the jury with the assurance of a woman who knew she was in control. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, This case is not one of bitterness or heartache. It's about promises. Promises that were made, promises that were breached, and property that was taken unlawfully. My clients made financial, emotional, and physical contributions toward the purchase and development of Coyote Pass. They were assured that it would be equally shared. Instead, they found that Mr. Brown had planned a scheme to consolidate ownership in his name, and in the end, transfer control to his legal wife, Robyn Brown, without their participation or even knowledge. Gasps spread throughout the gallery. Although the accusations weren't new, hearing them read so clearly gave them added gravitas. Rachel went on, walking slowly in front of the jury. We will present you with emails, bank statements, and testimony that establish Kody Brown acted in bad faith. We will illustrate how he took advantage of the trust and love of his family to make himself wealthy and to cut out the very women who assisted him in establishing his empire. And when we are finished, you will realize that this is not merely a property dispute. It is one of fraud, deception, and betrayal. Kody swallowed hard, his own carefully placed mask beginning to slip. This wasn't reality TV any longer. There were no editors to shape the narrative, no confessionals where he could spin his version of events. This was a court of law. And here, the truth had teeth. When it was Kody's turn, his lawyer gave a much different description. The plaintiffs knew very well that Kody Brown would control the family assets, he pleaded. They knew that some legal decisions had to be made in order to safeguard those assets. Any adjustments or transfers were done with the view to keeping the property for all concerned. But as he was saying it, the attorney's words were empty. The faces of the jury remained unimpressed. They had read the headlines. They had seen the documents, and they weren't believing the misunderstood leadership tale. As the first day of testimony came to a close, the burden of what was to come rested heavy on all those in the room. Christine sat with her eyes fixed forward, not even glancing at Kody. Janelle held onto a folder full of financials that she knew would soon be proof against them. Meri sat quietly, her gaze unfocused, possibly going over every choice that brought them to where they were. And what about Kody? He glared at the vacant witness stand, his mind reeling in horror at how it had all happened. For years he had convinced himself he could direct the narrative, direct the people, direct the result. But today, with cameras recording his every scowl and murmurs of betrayal ringing in every ear of the room, he found himself confronting something terrifying. This was no longer his tale. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., this court will reconvene, the judge declared, ringing his gavel. The clang was like thunder. Reporters sprang to their feet, calling out questions. Flashbulbs blasted in Kody's face as he rose, holding Robyn's hand more tightly than ever before. But for the first time in his life, his customary swagger was absent. The leader of sister wives, once inviolate, once beloved, was now simply another man in court. And as he left the courtroom, one fact hung in the air like a storm cloud. Coyote Pass would be either his biggest win or his biggest loss. The next morning, the courtroom was charged with an eerie electric energy. News of the Brown family's explosive fight over property had already made it out of the tabloids. Now it was front-page news nationwide. Television cameras thronged the courthouse steps, and inside every available seat was occupied. Even those who had never seen one episode of Sister Wives couldn't resist the spectacle. A formerly harmonious plural family shattered by greed, deception, and real estate. Christine Brown sat rigidly at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded tightly together, staring at the ground. She had practiced her testimony 100 times the previous night, walking her living room as if addressing an imaginary jury. But now, just a few feet away from the man she had shared her life with for nearly 30 years, her heart raced so violently it seemed ready to burst from her chest. The bailiff's voice boomed out. "All rise." The judge came in, serious and unsmiling. "Court is now in session," he announced. "We will hear evidence from the plaintiffs. Mrs. Christine Brown, you may proceed to the stand." Christine rose slowly, her legs shaking underneath her. As she moved towards the witness stand, Kody's eyes trailed after her, cold, unyielding, defiant. Once, they had gazed at her with love. Now they regarded her only as a threat. She held up her right hand, promised to tell the truth, and sat down. The attorney for the plaintiffs, Rachel Carter, stepped forward with an even measured tone. Mrs. Brown, she started, can you explain to the court why you are here today? Christine breathed in deeply. Because the man who is over there, she said, pointing straight at Kody, lied to us. Lied to me, Janelle and Meri. Lied about everything, especially Coyote Pass. The courtroom grew quiet. The statement was like a slap in the face. Christine only glanced at the jury before she went on. When we purchased that property, we had a vision. Kody told us that each wife would have her own piece of ground. We'd build houses side by side. It was going to be the beginning of a new chapter. One final chance to create a family future. We believed him. Her voice trembled, but she continued. I invested money, thousands of dollars into the dream. We all did. Janelle even liquidated some of her retirement. We thought we were investing in our future, but then we discovered Kody had acted behind our backs. Rachel nodded. And what was that, Mrs. Brown? He put the deeds over, Christine replied, her voice firm but bitter. Not to us, not to the family, but to Robyn. He began transferring packages into her name. Initially he explained it was because of taxes. Later he explained that it was for legal reasons. But we knew he was disinheriting us. Kody's lawyer exclaimed at once. Speculation. Overruled, the judge said quietly. Proceed, Mrs. Brown. Christine dug into a folder and extracted a chain of printed emails. These are exchanges between Kody and an attorney who does real estate, she told Rachel, handing them over. He instructed the lawyer to send transfers without our knowledge. In one he even stated, once it's in Robyn's name, the rest will have no claim. The courtroom was filled with whispers. Journalists rushed to scribble the quote. Kody fidgeted, adjusting his tie. Robyn moved in closer to him, speaking something desperately. Rachel held up one of the emails and read it. Once it's in Robyn's name, the rest will have no claim. She looked at the jury. Sound like a man who wants to share? Christine's hands trembled a bit as she spoke, but there was a steel in her voice now. This wasn't about keeping the family safe. This was about controlling it. Kody always wanted to be in power. He wanted us all to be reliant on him. Financially, emotionally, everything. And Coyote Pass was his last grasp. He wanted to own it, control who lived where, and finally who belonged. The gravity of her accusation hung in the air. Even the judge seemed disturbed. Rachel moved out of the way. No further questions, Your Honor. The defense moved to cross-examine. Kody's attorney, a lanky man named David Harper, came forward with a practiced smile. Mrs. Brown, he started smoothly. You accuse my client of lying to you. But isn't it also true that he managed the family's business affairs all the time? Christine narrowed her eyes. Yes, because he wanted it that way. He didn't let us be involved. But you signed documents giving him the power to make financial decisions, didn't you? Yes, she admitted, because I trusted him. That's what marriage is supposed to be. But trust isn't a blank check to commit fraud. Harper changed tactics. You also left the marriage voluntarily, did you not? Christine nodded. Yes, because I was done being manipulated. But leaving him doesn't mean he gets to steal what I helped build. There was a flicker of applause in the gallery, swiftly silenced by an unpleasant look from the judge. Thank you, Mrs. Brown, Harper said brusquely, obviously realizing he was losing his ground. No further questions. Christine sat down, her eyes shining with unshed tears, but her head held high. On her way back to her seat, Janelle caught her hand and squeezed it. It was a silent show of solidarity, a reminder that they were in this together. Mrs. Janelle Brown, the bailiff said, come take the stand. Janelle strode purposefully. While Christine's testimony had been high emotion, hers was strictly business. She had been the family's financial planner for decades, the one who kept track of every expenditure, every investment, every payment on the land. If anyone could document wrongdoing, it was her. Mrs. Brown, Rachel started, can you describe your part in the Coyote Pass purchase? I took care of the financial details, Janelle asserted. I negotiated with the bank, prepared the loan requests, coordinated the down payment. Each wife chipped in, but I documented it all. And how much did you contribute yourself? More than $82,000, she answered without flinching. That was savings, investments, and cash I took out of my retirement account. The jurors leaned in as she went on. I thought I was buying a home for the future, a plot of land bearing my name. But when I asked for copies of the property titles last year, I was informed that I was not an owner on any of them. Rachel's brow creased. And what did you discover instead? Robyn's name. Janelle spat. Parcel after parcel, all transferred to her. And the transfers had been made months before Kody had ever said a word about restructuring ownership. Rachel laid out a folder of bank statements and title reports, entering them into evidence. Your Honor, these documents reflect a consistent pattern of intentional transfers intended to centralize ownership in Robyn Brown, without the knowledge or approval of the other wives. Kody's attorney protested again, but the judge brushed it aside. The evidence speaks for itself, he said. Janelle glared at Kody. I gave almost 3 decades of my life to this family. I believed in our vision, but he used my loyalty against me. He used us all. There was silence. Kody moved again, but this time there was a flash of panic on his face. He had not anticipated this level of specificity, and he certainly had not anticipated Janelle being so exact. The last witness of the day was Meri Brown. She spoke softly, but what she said had a quiet power. I was the first, she said. I was with him before the cameras, before the fame. I had believed in the plural family vision, but I saw it all fall apart when Coyote Pass was used as a weapon. He said we were equal. He said this land would be ours to share. But ultimately, he used us as pieces in a game to be discarded. Meri's testimony wasn't filled with documents or emails. It was filled with heartbreak. And in some ways, that was even more powerful. By the time she stepped down, several jurors looked visibly shaken. The judge called for a recess, and the courtroom emptied into the hallway. Reporters swarmed Christine and Janelle for statements. Kody and Robyn slipped out a side door, their faces grim and pale. Inside, the tide of the trial had shifted. The plaintiffs had drawn first blood, and it was deep, with evidence of secret transfers, damning emails, and betrayed trust laid bare. The once invincible patriarch now looked vulnerable. And as Christine whispered to Janelle on their way out, the fire in her voice said it all. This is just the beginning. He thought we'd never fight back. He was wrong. What had begun as a dream shared by his family was now a legal nightmare. And the courtroom fight over Coyote Pass was only just getting started. The courtroom was silent and still when the proceedings started up again the next morning. The buzz that had filled the gallery was now captured by a strained, almost smothering expectation. Christine, Janelle, and Meri had done their part. They had revealed the betrayal, disclosed the paper trail, and smashed the delusion that Kody Brown had crafted over years. Now it was his turn to strike back. Kody tightened his tie as he stood with his lawyer, David Harper. He had spent the previous night memorizing every word, every excuse, every possible spin to turn the tale around in his own favor. His reputation, his money, his future said everything hung in the balance. He was not defending land. He was defending the last vestige of control over a family drifting away from him. Your Honor, Harper stood, his movements purposeful and sure. Today we will have evidence and testimony that demonstrate Mr. Brown acted not in greed or malice, but in responsibility to his family, his finances, and the legacy he has worked so hard to construct. This case is not one of deceit. It's one of leadership. The judge nodded. You may call your first witness. Mr. Kody Brown, Harper instructed, addressing his client. Please take the stand. Every eye followed as Kody made his way to the witness stand. Tension hung in the air, and no one denied it. Even with the years of family melodrama plastered in tabloids and on reality TV screens, nothing was as raw or as real as the moment the bailiff swore him in. And Harper came forward with a voice that was supposed to be reassuring. Mr. Brown, Harper started. Can you tell the court in your own words why you made those decisions at Coyote Pass? Kody caught his breath, then addressed the jury squarely. I never meant to hurt anybody, he started, his voice firm but laced with feeling. When we purchased Coyote Pass, it was a dream. It was a vision of what our family's future could be. But over time, circumstances changed. Finances changed. The housing market changed. And the fact was, we needed someone to oversee the land, to make quick legal decisions, and to look out for it against risk. Was that someone you? Harper asked. Yes, Kody responded. I always did those sorts of things. My wives left that up to me, because they knew I was thinking about the bigger picture. It was never a matter of taking from them. It was a matter of protecting our family's resources. There was a wave of doubt through the courtroom. Christine shifted uncomfortably, arms folded tightly. Janelle wrote notes in frantic circles. Harry just glared at him, her expression unfathomable. Mr. Brown, Harper went on. The plaintiffs allege that you illegally conveyed property titles into Robyn Brown's name. Why would you do that if you were going to divide the land equally? Kody nodded as if anticipating the question. Okay, I know how it appears, he said. But the reality is, Robyn and I were the only ones who could qualify for certain financial products, loans, insurance, development permits, because we are legally married. Had I placed the land in everyone's names, it would have made those processes more difficult. We had to have clear, centralized ownership to proceed. Harper gestured toward the jury. So you're saying it was a strategic decision? Exactly, Kody said firmly. It wasn't about excluding anyone. It was about making sure the land didn't get tied up in red tape. Once the development was complete, the plan was always to redistribute ownership. Everyone would have gotten their share. Christine couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. The judge banged his gavel. Order in the court. Harper overrode the interruption. Mr. Brown, did you ever directly inform your wives they would forfeit their rights to the property? Never, Kody replied hastily. I made them understand. Right from the start we were creating this dream together. I've dedicated my life to this family. I would never knowingly take that away from them. But Rachel Carter, the attorney for the plaintiffs, was prepared. Brown. She stood up to begin cross-examination. You stated under oath that you never meant to leave your wives behind. But let's examine your own words. She walked over to the evidence table and picked up a printed email. Does this appear familiar? Kody shifted restlessly. Yes, that's an email that I wrote. Rachel read it aloud. Once it's in Robyn's name, the rest will have no claim. She held her breath, hanging on to the silence. Tell me, Mr. Brown, how precisely does that fit with your testimony about redistributing ownership later? Kody swallowed hard. That was taken out of context. Out of context, Rachel repeated. Mr. Brown, it appears extremely obvious. You were not discussing financial planning. You were discussing eliminating these women, your wives, the mothers of your children, from the picture altogether. Not true, Kody argued, his voice elevating. I was angry when I posted that. They were on the verge of pulling out of the development. I had to ensure that the property was being safeguarded. Safeguarded from whom? Rachel fired back. From the very individuals who paid for it. The courtroom fell into silence. Kody shifted once more, frantically adjusting his collar. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Rachel moved in a little closer. Let's discuss the timeline. Mr. Brown, you say all of this was part of your long-term strategy, but the property transfers were made before you informed the plaintiffs of any perceived restructuring. Isn't that true? Yes, Kody acknowledged softly. And you didn't get their approval before doing those transfers, did you? No. So in truth, this wasn't a family decision at all. It was a unilateral decision, your choice, without the knowledge or consent of the women who assisted you in buying the land, right? Kody's jaw tightened. I did what I felt was best. Best for whom? Rachel demanded. For them or for you? The question struck him like a blow. He didn't respond. Rachel allowed the pause to hang before she landed her final blow. Mr. Brown, you're a family unity man. You've created a brand around trust and values. But here, sworn in, you confess to lying, hiding documents, and selling property from behind your wives' backs. That's not leadership. That's manipulation. Objection. Harper yelled. Sustained, the judge replied. Miss Carter, focus on questions. Rachel nodded, but the harm was done. Kody's reputation had been torn apart. He seemed smaller now, deflated, desperate, and the jury was aware. But Harper wasn't prepared to give up yet. On redirect, he attempted to patch up his client's reputation. Mr. Brown, he asked softly, do you regret the way you did things? Of course, said Kody, his voice shaking slightly. I regret they feel betrayed. I regret this dream. Our dream has become this nightmare. I never wanted it to end like this. Do you still love your family? From the bottom of my heart, Kody declared, gazing at Christine, Janelle, and Meri. I did everything I did for them. I know they don't think that, but it's true. Christine gazed back at him, unwavering. Janelle shook her head slowly. Meri looked away. As the judge requested recess, the courtroom hummed with quiet talk. Kody's testimony had been a two-edged sword. He had described himself as a victimized leader, but his own words, his own emails, and his own actions had told a different story. Outside, the media thronged the steps for the second time today. Headlines were already being penned. Kody's excuses crumble under cross-examination. Emails reveal true intent behind Coyote Pass deal. Brown family war turns personal. Within the courthouse, Christine sat in stunned silence, her eyes fixed on the vacant witness stand. He still doesn't get it, she breathed to Janelle. He still thinks this is about control. He doesn't see what he's done to us. Janelle nodded. Oh, he understands, she said icily. He just thinks he can talk his way out of it, like he always has. But this wasn't another family gathering. This wasn't another season of Sister Wives. This was a courtroom. And here, the truth was louder than excuses. As Kody left the room, hemmed in by cameras and speculation, he knew the fight was far from won. His plea had been made, but the ground beneath him was eroding. The proof was piling up. The jury was listening, and the women he once dominated were no longer in fear. The battle for Coyote Pass had reached a new stage, one in which words would no longer work for him. The truth would determine his destiny. And as the fourth and final witness was set to testify, Kody Brown started to know that his family's story, and his own legacy, could be rewritten forever. Day 4 of the trial started out with a storm raging, not outside the courthouse, but within it. Journalists had spent the night there. Legal commentators were describing this as one of the most explosive family court showdowns in reality TV history, and public opinion had begun to turn heavily against Kody Brown. His elaborate defense of the previous day had not won anyone over. The jury appeared skeptical. The crowd was openly aggressive, and even Robyn's previously rock-solid confidence was beginning to crumble. But none of that could have prepared Kody, or anybody else, for what came next. The bailiff's gavel banged the court into order. All rise. The judge came in, grim as ever, and the room fell silent. We will now continue the presentation of further evidence, he declared. Rachel Carter, the attorney for the plaintiffs, stood up with a soft, deadly assurance. Your Honor, the plaintiffs request to enter newly discovered documents into evidence. These documents were acquired via subpoena last week to Flagstaff County Records and First Sunrise Title Company. They are straight to the point regarding the ownership of the Coyote Pass property. Kody's lawyer jumped in at once. Your Honor, this is an ambush. We haven't had a chance to look through these. They were given to the defense 2 days ago. Rachel interrupted brusquely. If they didn't take the time to look through them, that's their fault. The judge nodded. Objection overruled. Continue, Miss Carter. Rachel approached the evidence table slowly and put down a heavy manila folder on it. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she announced, what you are about to view is the smoking gun. Evidence that Mr. Brown actively and methodically planned to deprive my clients of ownership rights long before this lawsuit was ever initiated. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Kody shifted uneasily, his jaw clenching, as Rachel produced the first 2 documents, 2 deeds of property transfer. These, she continued, holding them up for the judge and jury to examine, are formal county documents proving that Parcel 1 and Parcel 3 of Coyote Pass, the 2 most valuable portions of the property, were sold into a private trust with only Robyn Brown in control. The transfers were made on March 14, 2022, and April 2, 2022. None of the plaintiffs were made aware of these sales. Christine's hand darted to her neck as the room gasped. Although she had thought something like this might be going on, actually seeing the evidence in black and white was like a punch in the gut. Janelle's eyes bristled. This was evidence of what she had suspected for months. Meri sat stiff as a board, her face cold and unreadable. Rachel went on, turning to the next page. It gets worse. With these deeds, we received a trust agreement prepared by Mr. Brown's lawyer. In this, Mr. Brown is identified as the principal settler and Robyn Brown as the sole trustee. The wording is quite explicit. All the properties in the trust shall be administered and disposed of at the will of the trustee. No previous or subsequent claims from other members of the family shall be deemed legally enforceable. The courtroom was filled with murmurs, dispersed at the trustee's option. It was lawyer speak that allowed Robyn to sell, give away, or hold on to the land as she pleased. The other wives would have no claim on it at all. Kody's lawyer sprang to his feet. Objection, this trust was never fully carried out. It doesn't matter. Rachel faced the judge. Your Honor, the trust was signed, filed, and recorded. It was done, and Mr. Brown signed each page of it. The judge read the papers for a moment before inclining his head. Objection overruled. The evidence is admissible. Rachel wasn't finished. And that's not all, she said, producing another stack of papers. This one consisting of a series of email exchanges and internal memos from Kody's real estate lawyer. These letters indicate that Mr. Brown told his lawyers to do the transfers clandestinely and to utilize an alternate mailing address, so the plaintiff's common home would not receive county notifications. He actually wrote, I am quoting, "The less they know, the less they can fight." A gasp echoed through the courtroom. Fingers flew across computer keyboards belonging to reporters. Even the judge's face indicated a flash of astonishment. Christine's lawyer moved forward and whispered, "This is a home run." Christine, though, couldn't smile. She was too occupied seething at Kody, her face twisted in anger and sadness. Rachel approached the witness stand. Mr. Brown, she stated icily, you testified under oath that you did not intend to cut your wives out of the ownership of Coyote Pass. Are these signatures on these deeds yours? Kody's voice broke a bit. Yes? And is that your email to your lawyer? Yes? And did you or did you not instruct the transfers to be executed without informing the other family members? Kody hesitated, then let out a sigh. Yes? The courtroom erupted once more. Reporters yelling questions. Spectators murmuring angrily. The judge struck his gavel. Order! Order! Rachel moved in, her voice slicing like a knife. Mr. Brown, do you realize what this entails? You didn't merely fail to communicate. You deliberately kept legal transactions from the very individuals who assisted in paying for that property. That is not leadership. That is deceit. Kody folded his fists, his temper flaring. I was attempting to protect the family. He suddenly bellowed. You don't get it. They were turning against me, threatening to split, and I had to ensure the property wasn't going to be divided up and sold off before we could do anything. Christine sprang to her feet. We weren't threatening anything, Kody. We were begging you to communicate with us. And you lied. You lied to all of us. Order? The judge yelled, slamming the gavel once more. Mrs. Brown, sit down or you'll be held in contempt. Christine sat, shaking with anger. Kody slumped over the witness chair, the burden of his choices bearing down upon him. Robyn extended her hand to touch his, but he jerked it away, looking at the ground. Rachel faced the jury again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a miscommunication. This is not tax planning or permitting. This is a calculated, intentional scheme to divest 3 women of their right to property. Women who trusted him, bankrolled him, and staked their futures on him. Mr. Brown didn't betray only their trust. He attempted to erase their presence from the very dream he sold them. The room was silent. Even Kody's own lawyer seemed shaken. It was the most devastating day of testimony so far, and it was obvious to everyone in the room that the defense had taken a disastrous hit. Under cross-examination, Harper attempted frantically to repair his client's reputation. Mr. Brown, he asked gently, did you ever intend to leave the property in Robyn's name alone forever? No, Kody grumbled. I always intended to share it eventually. Why make a trust that leaves out everyone else then? Kody heaved a deep sigh. Because I freaked out. Everything was crashing. The marriages were dissolving. The family was breaking apart. And I was afraid that everything we'd established would be lost. I figured if I tightened up control, I could bail it out later, when things settled. Rachel rose once more for one last question. Mr. Brown, if you actually intended to fix it later, why did you make it say, the less they know, the less they can fight? Kody said nothing. He simply glared at the table, the silence more deafening than any denial could have been. The judge adjourned for a recess, and the courtroom descended into pandemonium. News reporters cried out questions, as Christine, Janelle, and Meri were led away by their lawyers. Robyn waited by herself for a brief moment, sobbing uncontrollably, before she followed Kody through a side door. Headlines blazed across each screen outside. Secret trust bomb shell blows up Brown case. Emails reveal Kody's hidden plan to cut wives out. Brown family war reaches point of no return within the courthouse corridors. Christine looked at her lawyer and whispered, "This is it. He can't talk his way out of this now." And she was right. With the secret documents exposed, the facade Kody had held on to so long, the facade of control, of good intentions, of family harmony, was irreparably destroyed. The court fight for Coyote Pass was no longer merely a fight for land. It was a fight for betrayal, for manipulation, and for a man's determination to cling to power no matter what. And for the first time it appeared all but certain that Kody Brown would be made to pay. By the fifth session of the trial, the Brown family courthouse drama had transcended a judicial struggle. It had become a national phenomenon. Photographers waiting outside the courthouse caught scores of passers-by chanting, "Justice for the wives," as social media hummed with the use of hashtags such as #CodyPassScandal and #CodyExposed. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with excitement. Everybody was aware that this was the most critical day so far. This was the day the wives would get their say, not only through attorneys or documents, but through their own words, unvarnished and unedited, and let the world know how profoundly Kody Brown had wronged them. The bailiff ordered the court into session, and the judge did not delay. "We will hear witness testimony from the plaintiffs next," he declared. "Mrs. Christine Brown, take the stand." Christine stood, her gait deliberate towards the witness stand. No hesitation in her footwork, only determination. She had waited almost 3 decades to love, to sacrifice, to build a life with Kody. But today, she sat before them not as his wife, but as a woman seeking justice. "Mrs. Brown," Rachel Carter started, "can you tell us in your own words, what emotional impact Mr. Brown's actions have had on you?" Christine's voice shook as she spoke. "I believed in him. I believed in the dream. I believed in us." She swallowed hard, her voice catching. "For years Kody assured us that Coyote Pass was to be our future, a home where all of our children could grow up together, where every wife would have her own house, where we would grow old as a family. I constructed my existence on that promise. I raised my children on that promise. And then I discovered that the whole thing was a lie." The courtroom was hushed. Christine inhaled and went on. "When I looked at those deeds, when I understood he had quietly transacted the land into Robyn's name, I felt like the floor had been pulled out from beneath me. It wasn't about money or property. It was about trust. It was about respect. And it was about 30 years of loyalty he discarded without a second's hesitation." Rachel nodded softly. "How did this betrayal impact your relationship with Mr. Brown?" Christine's eyes welled up with tears. "It ruined it. There's no love left after something like that. You don't recover from betrayal of such depth. He didn't just cheat me out of land. He cheated me out of the life he promised me. And the worst part, he never once apologized. Not once." Kody moved uncomfortably in his seat. His jaw clenched, and he glared at the table, unwilling to look up at her. Robyn reached out and touched his hand, but he did not react. Rachel thanked Christine and released her from the stand. The judge summoned the next witness, Janelle Brown. Janelle approached with another type of energy, less emotional, more contained, but no less forceful. She had always been the logical one, the calm anchor of the family. And now she was going to take apart Kody's defense, step by step. "Mrs. Brown," Rachel started, "could you walk me through the financial investments you made in the acquisition and development of Coyote Pass?" Janelle nodded, opening a folder full of records. "Yes. Over the years 2018 to 2022, I laid out around $82,000 directly to the Coyote Pass project. That's loan payments, down payments, property taxes, and site development fees. I also paid a number of infrastructure costs out of pocket, including water and power surveys. Because Kody promised me that it was our land, she produced bank records and receipts, presenting them as proof. This was not a gift. This was an investment. An investment made under the condition that I would own a portion of the property. Rachel walked to the jury box. And when you discovered you had no legal interest, how did that make you feel? Janelle's face set. I felt cheated. I felt dumb. I spent my entire life thinking Kody was a man of his word. And I wasn't the only one. He told all of us that this land was a family dream. But when it came right down to it, that dream was only for Robyn. She swiveled around to Kody, her anger now rising in her voice. Do you know what it's like to see your retirement funds go down the drain into something you'll never have? Do you know what it's like to work your whole adult life for a future that winds up being a scam? That's what he did to us. To all of us. A burst of emotion passed through the courtroom. Even jurors gazed visibly disturbed. Kody was actually nervous for the first time. He pulled at his collar and nervously eyed his lawyer. But nothing could save him from the words cutting into his reputation like razor-sharp knives. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Rachel murmured. No further questions. The last witness of the day was Meri Brown. Her testimony was potentially the most eagerly awaited. Meri had been Kody's first wife. The woman who had been with him before fame, before cameras, before the show made their lives headlines. Their relationship had deteriorated over the years. But today she wasn't here as an ex-bitter as is. She was here as a witness to decades of manipulation. Meri, Rachel coaxed. Will you explain to the court how Mr. Brown's behavior personally impacted you? Meri glared at Kody for a protracted wordless moment before responding. I remained with Kody for more than 3 decades. Through all of it, the arguments, the jealousy, the pain, I remained. I thought that whatever else happened, he was a man who loved his family. But this confirmed that I was mistaken. Her voice was getting stronger with each word. I might not have been lawfully married to him anymore, but I was still family. I still gave back, financially and emotionally, to Coyote Pass. And he didn't just betray us. He erased us. He erased me. It's like he wanted to remove me from our story completely. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she didn't flinch. I stood up for him when nobody else would. I protected him when people accused him of being selfish. But I don't know the man sitting across from you anymore. The Kody that I know would have never done this. The courtroom was completely silent. Even the judge looked emotionally affected. Rachel nodded, pleased. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Before Meri could step down, Rachel turned to the judge. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to submit one final piece of evidence. An email dated July 19, 2022. The judge nodded. Proceed. Rachel projected the email on the courtroom screen. It was from Kody to Robyn. Once the property is yours on the books, they won't have a claim. Then we can all figure out what happens next. And who's in the future. The room exploded. Gasp, whispers, even a couple of shouts filled the air. The implication was clear. Kody hadn't merely decided to capture the land. He had decided who, if anyone, of his wives would be included in his future. Order! The judge shouted, pounding his gavel again and again. Order! Rachel addressed the jury, her voice slicing through the uproar. This is not about misconceptions. This is not about management. This is a deliberate breach of faith. And this email is proof. Kody's face was white, his eyes racing about the room. His lawyer spoke frantically, but everyone knew the damage was done. His reputation had been utterly destroyed, not by lawyers, but by the women who had once loved him most. When the court adjourned for the day, the energy was unrecognizable. Journalists filled the hallway, crying out questions. Christine, Janelle, and Meri emerged together, side by side, a united front. Not sister wives, but survivors. Robyn followed Kody quietly behind, her face smeared with tears. In place of the proud patriarch, who once dictated every narrative, was a man laid bare, shamed, and completely alone. As Kody walked into the flashing lights of the cameras outside, one shouted question rose above all the others. Mr. Brown, do you regret betraying your family? He didn't reply. He couldn't, because in that instant, even he realized this was no longer a trial for land anymore. It was the public anatomy of his legacy. The women he used to belittle as weak had turned the entire weight of truth against him, and the world watched as the empire he constructed, brick by brick, crumbled beneath the burden of his own deceit. The time had now come for the last act. The verdict which would put an end to Kody Brown's dream once and for all, or seal his destiny as the man who lost everything he once professed to love. The last day of the trial broke with a gray, heavy sky, the sort of morning that seemed to be holding its breath. Crowds of people gathered at the courthouse before dawn, their signs and cameras converting the steps into a discordant war zone of opinion. Some carried signs with the letters, "Justice for Christine." Others yelled, "Kody lied." And a few die-hard believers still held on to hope, waving signs that declared "Keep the family together." But in the courtroom, there was no shouting, no chanting, just silence. The type of silence preceding the storm breaking. Everyone knew that today would be different. Kody Brown slumped over the defense table, shoulders sagging, face pale, cocky smile nowhere to be found. Weeks of testimony, incriminating evidence, and heart-wrenching confessions had taken their toll. The once paternal patriarch of sister wives, the patriarch who had founded an empire based on charm and domination, now appeared a shadow of his former self. Robyn sat next to him, her face streaked with tears and far away, looking at nothing in specific. 2 days ago, she had ceased holding his hand. On the other side of the room, Christine, Janelle and Meri sat again. But this time, there was something different about their stance. The anger which had driven them for weeks was still there, but it was now tempered by something else: determination. They had battled this battle, not only for property, but for dignity, justice, and closure. And whatever the judge's ruling today might be, they were prepared to accept it. "All rise," the bailiff ordered as the judge walked in. The whole courtroom rose in strained silence. When they all sat down, the judge shuffled through a thick sheaf of papers. The ultimate verdict. Cameras snapped from the gallery, recording each micro-expression, each flick of a hand, each drop of perspiration. "Carefully we have listened to the evidence," the judge started, his voice firm but serious. "We have heard from all sides. We have scrutinized deeds, financial records, email exchanges, trust records, and statements from witnesses. What this court now has to determine is whether Mr. Kody Brown acted within his legal authority, or whether he used deceptive, fraudulent means that breached the rights of his co-owners and relatives." Kody's jaw clenched. Christine's heart hammered in her chest. Janelle gripped Meri's hand beneath the table. The judge paused briefly, letting the weight of his words settle. After thorough deliberation, he continued, "This court finds in favor of the plaintiffs." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, weeping and whispers charged the air. Christine clapped a hand over her mouth, tears springing at once. Janelle breathed heavily, shoulders shaking with relief. Meri just closed her eyes and whispered softly, "Thank you." Across the room, Robyn buried her face in her hands. Kody did not shift. He sat stiff, eyes fixed straight ahead, his world shattering in slow motion. The judge struck his gavel. "Order! Order in the court." There was again a hush when he went back to reading the verdict. "This court finds that Mr. Brown acted in bad faith and willfully and knowingly by conveying property deeds without disclosure, forming a trust to make consolidation of ownership, and seeking to divest the plaintiffs of their equitable interests in Coyote Pass. His conduct is constructive fraud and a breach of fiduciary duty." Kody swallowed hard, his mouth dry. He had braced himself for defeat, but having the words fraud and bad faith said out loud in a courtroom was an embarrassment beyond anything he could have conceived. Consequently, the judge went on, "This court directs that each parcel of Coyote Pass real property be retitled at once to name Christine Brown, Janelle Brown, and Meri Brown as co-equal co-owners, with each co-party holding a 25% undivided interest. Robyn Brown's trust shall be terminated, and any deeds placed in her name shall be invalidated and reverted back to joint tenancy." The wives' attorneys exchanged smiles. The gallery erupted into applause, quickly silenced by the judge's gavel again. But he wasn't done. Furthermore, the judge said, "Mr. Brown is ordered to reimburse the plaintiffs a total of $258,000 for misappropriated funds, including personal contributions used to purchase and develop the property. These funds must be paid within 120 days of this ruling. Failure to comply will result in a court-ordered sale of Mr. Brown's remaining share of the property to satisfy the judgment. Christine's tears flowed freely. Now, it wasn't just the money. It was validation. The assurance that everything they had been through counted. Janelle buried her face in her hands, trembling quietly in sobs. Meri remained immobile, one tear trickling down her cheek. Her control finally shattered. The judge wasn't done administering blows. Finally, he announced, "This court issues a permanent injunction barring Mr. Brown from transferring, selling, or encumbering any part of Coyote Pass without the written approval of the co-owners. The era of solitary rule on this issue is at an end." The gavel came down one last time. Court is adjourned. The room was a riot. Reporters swarmed into the aisles. Cameras popped like lightning. The wives embraced tightly, their tears mixing with relieved laughter. They had won, not only the land, but a part of themselves back. It was more than a legal victory. It was the retrieval of their power, their dignity, their voice. Kody sat frozen. His lawyer spoke in a hushed tone in his ear, but the words didn't penetrate. All he could hear was the judge's voice in his mind. Bad faith, fraud, injunction. Injunction, it was all lost. All he had worked for, all he had fought for. His control, his image, his legacy. Robyn looked back at him, her eyes puffy from tears. "What have you done?" she whispered. But Kody did not respond. He did not even glance at her. The wives walked out of the courtroom in unison, a solid front for the first time in years. Christine paused for a moment at the podium outside, her voice shaking but firm as she addressed the press. "This isn't about property," she added. "It's about being held accountable. It's about defending yourself when someone attempts to take everything from you. We used to believe in a dream once, and Kody made our dream a weapon. Today we reclaimed it." Janelle proceeded next. "For years we were told we had no power, that we had to trust someone who never really had our best interests at heart. This ruling demonstrates that we were right to battle, and we hope it sends a message to anyone out there who's been manipulated or controlled. You are not powerless." Even Meri, who had said nothing during much of the trial, had a brief word. "This chapter is over," she stated baldly. "And now, we begin again. On our terms." Up and down the courthouse steps, Kody and Robyn moved quietly through a side door, accompanied by security. The cameras pursued them mercilessly. "Kody, any comment? Do you regret what you've done? Will you appeal the decision?" He said nothing. He couldn't. His eyes were vacant, his face expressionless. The shame was crushing him. Stepping into the waiting SUV, he caught a final glimpse of Christine, Janelle, and Meri standing shoulder to shoulder, smiling and crying at the same time, holding their heads high. For the first time in his life, Kody wasn't the center of their world. He wasn't their leader. He wasn't their protector. He was the man they had vanquished. That evening, as reports across the nation flashed the verdict, one caption best captured it. "Brown umpire falls, wives win land, lawsuit and their freedom." Within his secluded home, Kody sat alone in the dark, looking at the court order on his desk. Coyote Pass, his grand plan, his badge of authority, had become a testament to his failure. Each inch of it stood as a reminder of the vows he violated, the trust he destroyed, and the family he lost. For Janelle, Christine, and Meri, though the narrative was not so much an ending, it was a beginning, a fresh start without manipulation, control, and betrayal. They didn't need Kody anymore to determine their worth. They had established it for themselves in the most public, unmistakable manner. And when the spotlights of the news trucks dissipated and the world progressed to the next news story, one thing was left etched in the very core of the sister wives drama. Undefined. Coyote Pass belonged no longer to Kody Brown. It was the wives' triumph, a triumph conceived in betrayal, smelted in the furnace of a courtroom, and stamped with the gavel that brought his dominance to a permanent end.